Alright, welcome back. Hope everyone's having a lovely day, a lovely night wherever you're from. And real quick before we get started, as always, I want to give a lovely shout out to the channel members on this channel. So thank you so much to these lovely commanders here that you see on screen. Thank you guys so much for your guys' constant generosity and support to me as always. It really means a lot to me, so thank you guys so much. And if you guys are actually interested in becoming a lovely commander yourself, if you are interested in any of these cute and lovely emotes, loyalty crown badges, you want a special role in the Discord, make sure to join the Discord. But as always, if you choose to do so, thank you so much. Just remember, that's not the only way that you can support me. Just watching the content like you are right now is truly the best way. Liking, subscribing, and commenting, everything really does help, so thank you guys so much. And for today's video, while Chizuru is officially out right now, we're getting through the Great Rift, getting through her story, slowly enjoying everything. I think it's time to finally talk about her. Now, I finally did a lot of chaos with her, done a lot of runs, been having a blast with her, honestly. But I will say, if you already have enough Void DPS on your team, you really don't need her, but she is great and honestly looks fantastic. But I want to break it down, so there's going to be timestamps for wherever you want to go down below. So let's get started. Now, first things first, I do want to talk about if you should even be pulling for her. And I will say right now, for most people, especially if you have Void DPS like I mentioned before, you're just going to want to skip. This is a standard character, especially if you are free to play. Save your pulls right now. She is going to be added to the standard, just like Yuki and Haru are right now in the standard pool. So I would wait for now. The same can also be said for her partner, because her partner is also very close to another free-to-play partner. Like, Itsuku's great, but she can also be comparative to a free one, which is fantastic, and that gives more flexibility. So I actually think that's a good thing, so if you can save your pulls, even better. Now, when we're on the topic of actually talking about teams, this is where it gets a bit more exciting just because it feels a lot less restrictive than Yuki was. And I've seen a lot of different team comps. For me, my main combination of using a teammate with her is definitely Tressa. Tressa helps a lot, especially with her shadow daggers. If you could get her shadow reload, that provides where if she gets healed, she gets a shadow dagger. That's even better. You can do a lot of fun things with her, especially her multi-hit card. It balances itself well with Chizuru's Shadow of the Moon. I think that's a great complementary right there. I've been using Rei as well. I've seen a lot of people use Nia, Luke, Hugo, seen some fun things, but I also want to highlight my boy Cassius. Cassius is very important because when it comes to Cassius, I think one thing I will say is that right now, he's seeing a lot of stuff right now because of the Great Rift. He's becoming a viable character right now, especially for the top ranks. I think right now it's Tressa, Cassius, and I believe Mika. And that's awesome to see because my boy Cassius, he's drippy looking. I love his personality. I really love him in the story. He's just cool. I love his whole like gambler mentality. I love it, dude. It's just sick. But also, one of the more important reasons why it's just the Joker card is such a strong card. Because if you get him E1, you get to choose one card from the draw or the discard pile and you just move it to your hand. That gives a lot more utility for Chizuru, especially if you're trying to get a specific card. That's really useful. So the fact that I managed to finally get him at E2, I am going to be building him now, especially because he looks really sick, so I cannot wait to use him because that's probably going to be my main team. I'll probably be running Tressa, Cassius, and I'm also going to be running Chizuru. So I think that's going to be my main team going forward. And that's also the team that I'm using, except I'm using Rei. I just think that's a really fun team overall. And now I want to start talking about the cards. The cards are interesting. And this is where it gets a little dicey because I think her basic cards are very important just because it adds more to the Shadow of the Moon. But it all depends on the potential, because if you get her basic card proficiency right here, where it changes the Moon Slash card from just like 100% damage to 60% damage times 2 hits, that's where it comes in play, where that's really good. So honestly, if you're trying to get rid of cards, if you already have that potential, I think they're really good, and you could just get rid of Spirit Flame's Ward, and you don't really have to worry about anything else. Karmic Flames, this initiation card that you're going to be starting with, this is how you kind of start the rotation when you're using Chizuru and how you start the battles. I also think that it's really important to note that you shouldn't be duplicating this card, especially because the Curse Shackles don't really stack like that, so I don't think it's important. I feel like it's just redundant for your deck. The Epiphanies, though, you can't really go wrong with any of these. To me, my personal favorite ones are either the Create the Shadow of the Moon, because you basically get 5 Will-O-Wisps, and that's really useful too depending on your dupe count, or any of the other ones. Honestly, I think this one is very handy if you are doing like base into the hyperspace or something like that, where there's multiple enemies. So you're able to just put the Karmic Flame and do the shackles onto any other enemy after you kill them. That's really useful. If you're going against bosses, obviously this is not going to be really that useful, just by putting the Cursed Shackles on them. But still, really good card. Can't really go wrong with any of these. I think I have a different one where it's like, the damage is the same, but I get like Agony or something. Like, I didn't really get the best Karmic Flame card, but still, you can't really go wrong depending on the playstyle that you're going for. Honestly, I think it's solid either way. Just know what you're doing, because depending on what dupe count you have, this is going to be a lot more useful or a bit more tame. If you are at her dupe 2, I actually think this is probably a solid pick right here. Now, with Karmic Flame out the way, I do want to start talking about her next card, which I think is a top go, and also a contender for being your priority copy, which is Tsukiyomi. 2 Will-O-Wisp for each hit of the next attack card of this unit used. This is how you're able to generate more of those things that are under her bar when you're in a battle, because once you get 5 Will-O-Wisps, you build 1 Shadow of the Moon. Remember, you want to build Shadow of the Moon to the point where you get Shadow of the Moon Plus, which is at bind 3. So you want to keep these stack rotations going, so having more Will-O-Wisps is always going to be useful. But there are some fun shenanigans that you can do with her. Her first one right here is also a really solid one. Her first Epiphany, 3 Will-O-Wisp for each hit of the next attack card of this unit used. This one might be a top favorite of mine for the Epiphanies, just because you start generating a lot more, especially if you combine it with something like the Oni Hunt, where you get a lot of hits in. You can get a lot of Will-O-Wisp built up very quick. But then honestly, even with these ones where you build some additional hits and only do 1 Will-O-Wisp each, depending on your playstyle, this is also very viable. But my personal favorite, because I'm at her dupe 2, is add 2 hits to the next Shadow of the Moon or Shadow of the Moon Plus being used. This is very handy and very useful, and it kind of changes up her playstyle a little bit, and it feels a bit more spammable, and I really like that. That's been very useful for me, especially during my Chaos runs. I actually really like this card a lot. Then there's also 3 Will-O-Wisps for each attack card of this unit used. This is also pretty good as well, especially because you just get 3 Will-O-Wisps. A lot of good generation. I feel like her weakest one, in my opinion, is when an attack card of this unit is used, you get 2 Will-O-Wisp, and it becomes a unique and lead card. Lead cards can be useful depending, especially if you have that one ring where it activates automatically, so it's free. I think that can be useful, but you just got to be, dependent on what you have at the time. And then Bound at Dusk. This is the interesting card that is both a buff and a debuff. This is a unique card and its initiation. And one of the more important aspects is the Inhibit. Inhibit means that you cannot gain any AP except at the start of the turn or on Ravage, but it adds 1 hit to your Shadow of the Moon or Shadow of the Moon Plus. And then on top of all of this, we get a decreased cost by 1 until 1 random cards of this other combatants are used. The Epiphanies here are a bit interesting. So this one you can't really go wrong with, just because now you get a bit more flexibility of getting 2 random cards. It's a bit more straightforward, but I feel like you can't really go wrong with that one. Now with her next Epiphany right here, this one is a bit different, because when Shadow of the Moon Plus is used, it decreases the cost of the next 1 card used by 1. Once again, I feel like this one really depends on what you're going for, or how often you are spamming Shadow of the Moon Pluses, or even generating them. If you are generating them often, I actually do feel like this one's probably a better pick to go with. And then at the start of the turn, you gain Inhibit and activate 2 random cards of other combatants. This one is kind of a mixed bag, because the problem with this card is that when you're using her, there is a chance that you'll just activate some free cards. You don't know what you're going to activate, right? That's the problem with this. This could turn out really well for that run or that play that you're doing, or it's going to go backwards and you're just going to activate like unneeded cards. So this one really depends. If you want to roll the dice, get lucky, this one could be really useful as well. And then at the start of the turn, gain Inhibit, activate 2 random lead cards. Once again, this is really only useful if you only have lead cards. If you have lead cards that you want to specifically use, this might be useful, but it really depends on what you have in your deck, so keep that in mind. And then at the start of the turn, you gain Inhibit and decrease the cost of the card with the highest cost by 2. This could be useful as well depending what you have in your deck. That's the most important thing to keep in mind, that each of these are going to be very useful depending on your circumstances. Honestly, you can't really go wrong with the first 2, in my opinion, depending on where you're at. Honestly, you play it safe and you could just go with this one if you want. Don't blame you. That being said, now let's move on and let's start talking about Oni Hunt. This one, probably my favorite set of cards right now. Now, the default for this is 68% damage times 3, plus 30% damage amount to the next bind card used, and it adds haste. Haste basically stops the enemy from reducing their action count. Now, most of these will still have haste, but there are some circumstances with this last one where it turns into a unique. Now, my favorite by far is the very first card, which does lower the damage, but you get a lot more hits in, and it also increases the damage amount to the next bind card used. I really like this one just because it's really satisfying gameplay-wise to see all those hits keep going in, and especially if you have good crit rate, you're going to be able to get some insane hits in. So I feel like Oni Hunt is really satisfying. If you like seeing those like numbers go off, you'll really like this first Epiphany, and I think this one, to me, might be the must get in my opinion. I really don't care for it when it turns into like a single damage card. For me, that doesn't really matter, but it does increase the buff to the next bind card used, so do keep that in mind if you want to focus on that aspect. And then there's this one where 68% damage times 3, but if there are no other attack cards in hand, you add 2 hits. This can be really good, but you need to be careful, because if you have a character that you're doing this with, like let's say Veronica, if Veronica has her Ballista out, that counts as an attack card. So you will get screwed over by that and not be able to take advantage of this extra 2 hits. So depending on the team that you have, this can actually go kind of crazy because you get basically a 5-hitter. But you just got to keep that in mind that if you have Veronica or something, you're never going to be able to use that because of the ballistas that she generates. So do be careful who you have on your team if you want to take advantage of this card. And this one can kind of do some interesting stuff depending on what you're trying to do with the fact that exhaust cards are being used. Because you create 2 Moon Slashes, which is the default card, and applies exhaust to them. And it decreases them so they're going to be free. So depending on the rotation or the playstyle that you're doing, you could actually do something interesting with this. Me personally, I don't really do it. And then this one, I don't know how to feel about this one because it is a unique and it adds 40% damage amount to the Shadow of the Moon plus specifically, and you also get 3 Will-O-Wisp. So not really sure how I feel about this card, but I think you can still do some interesting things with it, especially if you feel confident that you're still generating Will-O-Wisp. And I mean, you do get 3 from them, but I just feel like this base first Epiphany just goes really hard. And arguably, I like both this and Tsukuyomi, so it's hard for me to say which one might be the better recommendation. I do want to say maybe Oni Hunt just because it's really fun to spam, but you can honestly go in the middle and try to get a copy of both. That's what I ended up doing, so I have a more balanced loadout. And obviously we have Shadow of the Moon, which is kind of explanatory because then this turns, after you get to 3, turns into Shadow of the Moon plus, and then goes to 5, and then you have to use it. Make sure you use it once you're at 5. But other than that, it is kind of clear. Now, when it comes to her ego skill, I do feel like Moonlight of High Tide feels a lot more satisfying than Yuki's. I feel like for how much damage you do, especially for the plus 50% damage amount for each Shadow of the Moon created, that's why it becomes a lot more satisfying. Because if you got to the point where you've already built so many, this can hit hard. So this is a really satisfying card to use, especially for 5 ego points. I feel like it's actually worth it for the price tag in comparison to someone like Yuki. Now let's start talking about partners, because Itsuki is actually a great partner for Chizuru, but she is totally not needed because even though she does do a good bit, not only does she give, stacks of attack by 5%, can stack up to 3 times, so that's 15%. Every time one attack card used by the assigned combatant deals 3 hits, inflicts 30% fixed damage, and her ego skill is really good, deals 200% damage to all enemies. You gain 1 Fierce Wind. Fierce Wind, I believe, adds a damage bonus for Chizuru. So you do get some good buffs, but here's the thing, she is not needed because if we were to change and we were actually going to use the Terra at level 5 does some really good damage for her. The assigned combatant attack is increased by 16%. When injured at the end of the battle, recovers 8% health. Pretty solid. In my opinion, I feel like you can't really go wrong with this, and a lot of people are going to have a lot of copies of her. So when this is like the secondary better choice, and it's arguably easier to use, cheaper too, so you get the best bang for your buck, a lot of people are just going to be using Satera, so that's completely fine. And I actually think that's great that that is a viable solution here. Now, other than partners, I do want to talk about my save data a little bit because a little bit of a pain in the ass, I will say. Kind of a pain in the ass. For some reason, I was getting so unlucky with Epiphanies throughout my runs that I was just not getting any of the right ones or getting it procced in time enough for copy cards. So, a little frustrating, But when it came down to it, I actually got kind of lucky. Honestly, I wish I kind of spent a bit more, but I'm happy with what I got. Because I kept my Moon Slashes. Obviously, I got rid of the shield. And the most boring one was Karmic Flames, because I only ended up just getting like 2 Agony applied to the target, which is kind of whatever. But I am really happy because I got a Divine Epiphany for Tsukuyomi, which is the same, add 2 hits to the next Shadow of the Moon or Shadow of the Moon Plus. But I also get AP. So that's pretty cool. So I duped that card. And then I got the basic Bound at Dust one, where it decreased the cost by 1 until 2 random cards are used. I got that. But I did also manage to dupe some Oni Hunts and get 57% damage times 4. So that's the Epiphany I ended up using. And then I actually used the Forbidden card here. And I got the lead card, which is draw 1, activate 2 random cards in hand. So that's what ended up happening. My gear is probably the best that you're going to get. She's a bit more flexible with gear. But if we're talking about Lab Zero, it's going to be a bit more complicated because there is some gear that will benefit her. But I'm going to be talking from the perspective of the actual chaos that we're running right now for Lab Zero. So keep in mind that when we're talking about gear, this is where it gets a little dicey because it's a bit more limited, but also flexible in comparison to Yuki. Because some of her best stuff is honestly going to be this right here, the Mutant Predator Spike, which I have. This is probably going to be your best bet if you're running Lab Zero. When there are 4 more cards in hand, you increase the damage amount by 30%. Most of the time, due to the way that Chizuru is playing, you are going to be able to have more than 4 cards in your hand. And if you don't have this, you could probably go for like Bone Cutter or Obsidian Sword, I believe it's called, which are blues. Those are fine options, but I feel like this is going to be your best bet. And you see this frequently too, so I feel like it's not hard to get this, especially because it's not a mythic. Chest Plate, obviously if you could get the Chest Plate where she can, you know, discard up to 3 cards and then just get more, so you can specifically choose what you want to get. I think that's definitely going to be your best bet. I kind of wish I got that because it helps to see if I could get more Oni Hunts to just spam at the very start. It's very helpful, but unfortunately I did not get that. But they did add some new chess pieces when it came down with this update, especially like Rocket Adorned Cape. At the start of the battle, you get 1 damage reduction and then you draw 1. That 1 draw can actually be very useful, arguably despite the discard Mythic Void. Depending on how lucky you get, it actually might be very useful. So this is a viable option. Or the Wings of Freedom. When hit, you increase the damage amount by 10%. Can sack 3 times, so it could go all the way to 30%. You get some fun things here. And then when it comes to the ring accessory, I have Superconductive Protein, where at the start of the battle, you change the cost of 1 card in your hand to 0 for 1 turn. I think that's just useful just so you can keep a little bit more AP going, especially for Chizuru. Just try to get more hits in. I think that's great. But that's not your only other option. That's not like limiting you by any means. For instance, you could be using Emblem of an Exceptional Entity, where it gives you a plus 30% damage amount, and then stress received becomes 0-1 for each battle. That being said, if you don't have this one, you could get the very easy one, which is the little blue cube, and that one is actually a plus 25% damage amount. So if you don't really care about the damage additive, you could probably just go for a Superconductive Protein like I did, and just go from there. But a bit more flexible, I feel like, especially if you're doing Lab Zero. So that probably would be your goals when it comes down to gear. But now going back to Chizuru, something real quick that I do want to talk about is her potentials. Like every other combatant though, it feels a bit more expensive just because you really want to try to flesh her out. Make sure priority you are getting this basic card proficiency because it's going to change how good her Moonslash is to like an extreme amount because of those extra hits. I feel like that's really useful. I personally went with the basic card upgrade all the way just because I want to try to maximize her Moonslash a lot more. And then critical chance, trying to build the critical damage is just so expensive. Now, I did go for these unique stats just to try to build up her actual unique cards more. And then also the basic card proficiency, just like I said, I want to try to maximize that. But it's kind of optional depending if you don't care for the Moonslash or not. It's not really necessary. Still a bit expensive. Now, for me, once again, like Yuki, I did go with the Blackwing Executioner's Tool and set Scarab set because I do like her basic cards, so I want that to deal more damage. Now, if you could go for crit rate and get void damage as well, those are probably going to be some of your priorities. Make sure that you're focusing on your substats. So something like this, like Blackwing, like pretty good, pretty fantastic. I'm pretty happy with this one. Always could go for more crit rate, but what can you do with RNG? I don't really care for the Conqueror set. I've seen some people using it. I don't really like it. You could probably do that if you want with the Blackwing. That's just not for me. And then Manifest Ego. I honestly think that you're fine if you don't have her at 0, but I do feel like it's really handy if you do get her at E2. When Shadow of the Moon Plus is used, you create one Shadow of the Moon card, just kind of keep it going, and it goes really well depending on the Tsukuyomi card you have. It can really go well, so that's why my save data I'm really happy with, because it complements this part of her E2 really well. But that's just me. And I know we also got that special dupe, but I would save that dupe, the one that we got from the shop, because I think we may be able to use that for limiteds, so I would hold off on that. But I really hope this helped. I'm like semi-competitive, but like at the same time, I play this really casually, but I have a lot of fun with this game, and I think that's why I'm enjoying it more. It feels like there's not really a huge stake. Like the Great Rift, I don't really care about. I want to try to hit 500k so I could get that save data sticker, but like nothing too serious. But if you did get Chizuru, let me know how you enjoy her playstyle. Hopefully this helps you get an idea of where you want to try to go with. There are different ways that you can try to approach her save data. I just gave some ideas with mine. Hopefully those Epiphany ideas help. But that is going to be it from me, so I hope you guys have a lovely day, lovely night wherever you're from. And as always, thank you so much for the constant support. Take care and have a good one.